What's going on, AFC? Once again, my name is Kyle Rice, and we are doing the week 2 video of our summer series over Galatians. And this week what we wanted to do is, Greg and I kind of talked, and there's a lot of key terms, there's a lot of things that we need to know within the letter of Galatians. And I do emphasize letter because there's a few things that we have to understand if we're going to get all that we can out of Galatians. And so last week we said that the author was Paul, and there's also some unique things within the letter of Galatians that we need to understand. The first thing that we need to understand is that Paul actually wrote this letter in chapter 6, verse 11. He says, "See with what large letters I am writing to you with my own hand." So Paul wrote 13 letters within the Old Testament, and within those 13 letters he usually had scribes or somebody write down what he was saying, and this is the one where he with his own hand wrote the letter. And so that's one of the unique things within Galatians. Another thing is that we need to understand what the difference between a letter and a book is. So if I'm writing a letter to one of my friends, there's a couple things that I do differently. The first thing that I do differently is stuff that we already understand as friends, or that we within our relationship know about each other. I don't write that stuff out to him because that would be redundant. And it would almost come off like I think of him as an idiot. So this is a letter to a region that Paul has already been to. So there's things within this letter that Paul is leaving out because he's already talked to them about. So there's an understanding that the people of Galatia have with Paul, and if Paul was writing a book to them, that would be different. Another unique thing about this letter is that it's not as warm as some of the other letters that Paul writes. Paul usually has a pretty extensive introduction to his letters, to who he's talking to, and he usually greets them very warmly. In this one we don't see that. Now later in the book we see Paul refer to the people of Galatia as brothers or things like that, but a lot of the other time that this book just doesn't seem quite as warm, or this letter doesn't seem quite as warm as some of Paul's other letters. And the last thing that we have to go over is some key terms within the letter of Galatians. Things that will pop up, things that we have to know, things that we have to understand in order to get what we can out of this book. And so the first term is legalism. Okay, so legalism comes up within why Paul is writing this letter, and legalism is kind of like, it's a matter of the heart. Okay, so it's a heart that says, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to follow the law so that I can put God into my debt. And that goes for anything. So I'm going to pray this morning so that God owes me something. I'm going to get into His Word so that God owes me something. I am not going to murder somebody today so that God owes me something. It's both good and bad things done with a certain position of your heart. So getting in God's Word, that's a great thing. If you're getting in God's Word in order to put Him into your debt, it becomes legalistic, and it's not a good thing. So legalism is one of the terms. Faith is another one. Faith, as in Hebrews 11:1, it's look up Hebrews 11:1 and read that verse, and that kind of defines what faith is. And then within the book of Galatians, it's looking towards Jesus for that assurance, for that hope that you have, for that trust. So within the Bible, Hebrews 11:1 will define it, and then within the context of Galatians, it's really quite specifically looking to Jesus for those things. Gentiles. It is kind of funny. I actually worked here for I think about a year, and I had no clue what a Gentile was, because I didn't really want to raise my hand and ask a question and have everybody look at me like I was stupid. So I'll save everybody out there that hardship. Gentiles is just a non-Jew. So Gentiles is everybody else. Justification. Justification is having right standing before God. It's like this. It's a legal connotation that that you actually are made right before somebody legally. But justification within this book is that you have right standing before God through your faith in Jesus Christ and what He did on the cross. And that's what justification is. And then there's two terms that sound very similar but are a little bit different, and we need to kind of define the difference between them. So the next term is the law. And so when the law is mentioned within the book of Galatians, most of the time it is referring to the Mosaic law. So think the 10 Commandments of Moses that God gave to Moses. Think along those lines. So that's mainly what it's referring to when it said, when Paul writes the law. Now there are a few exceptions within the book of Galatians. What you have to do is you have to read within the context. So if the context is kind of pointing towards the Mosaic law, then it most likely means that. And if it's not, then you have to take it a different way. And so one of the other terms is just law. And law is anything that you have set up, anything that anybody has set up to achieve right standing before God outside of the cross of Christ. So law can be just doing good things. It's that idea that I have set up something within my life that does not point to the cross of Christ, in which I have right standing before Him. And so that is what the law is. We've got some definitions in the work the work page that you guys have this week. There's also some questions, some discussion questions. If you guys have any questions, as always, hit us up. You know where we are. You guys know how to get a hold of us. We hope you guys have a blessed week, and we love you guys.